Hi everyone, it's Susan and welcome back to my channel. I'm going to share a little bit about the week ahead that's building up to this full moon in Taurus. A very highly aspected week, really fortunate, I think, in many ways, sometimes surprising. Uh, Surprises are just whatever they are. Surprises are unexpected events and unexpected information, but also can be great insights. So it's not necessarily strictly speaking, good or bad. And that will depend on your individual chart and your individual life. Um, so what I wanted to share is that I always forget to do this, so I'm going to do it right off the bat. I'm a consulting astrologer, and I forget often to ask you to like and subscribe to the channel. I do get kind of shunted to the side because I don't monetize my channel and I don't produce a lot. I produce things when I think there's something to talk about, basically. As I don't monetize, I'm not looking to make money through these videos, but I do unfortunately have to respond to the algorithm. And if you don't produce regularly, you just get slaughtered, basically. So I do appreciate your comments. I know some of you just comment so regularly, and I really appreciate reading them. Love to hear what's going on in your life as well. Sometimes sad, sometimes very happy news. It's all part of life, isn't it? And so if you like this video, please do indicate that and also do subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks for sharing as well. And a huge thanks to those of you who support me behind the scenes. If you send me a donation on PayPal or buy me a coffee or whatever it is that you are doing to support me, I'm so, so grateful. And sometimes I don't get a chance to thank you directly, but I want to make sure that you know it's really appreciated. And of course, the most of my income comes from working with you. So if you book a session with me, then that also is why I'm here. I want you to know that I exist, and I do earn my income by doing consultations with people, which is what I've been doing for nearly 15 years. So, right. So yeah, let me just also mention that I'm going to be producing the 2026 annual. Actually, I'm in the middle of doing so, the annual reports for all signs, and I will have that ready by the middle of November. I'm going away in 10 days to London, so I'm going to be a little bit patchy in terms of showing up here. I might do a video while I'm there. It depends a little bit how the days go. We're doing quite intensive days working with family constellation therapy. So that's something that is dear to my heart. And it's also how I work with the astrology. I work a lot to do with how you've come through with patterns that are inherited from family dynamics, family patterns that we sometimes relive and sometimes have to work through to heal. So, is there anything else I need to share with you? Yeah, so I'll make another announcement when those are ready. So certainly not before the middle of November. My target date is the 15th of November. And I do have some fabulous energy here, and we all do, to create those things because we've got this, we're right in the thick of this lovely week of this grand water trine. And as I'm doing this recording, we've got Mars applying to a trine with Jupiter, and Mars trining Jupiter, especially a really strong Mars in its own sign in Scorpio, and an exalted Jupiter in Cancer in a trine. It's like all systems go, just go do this thing. And that will come with some really great results, especially if you think about this as an arc of time rather than a moment in time. So it's not just at this moment on the 27th, but as Mars is also applying to a trine with Saturn, and then later on we'll see as well Mercury and Mars are both applying to a trine to Neptune. There's a lot of creative energy in this week. So let me just give you some of those dates because there's a lot of technical stuff. I'll try and get it out of the way. And then what I'm going to do is tie all of this in to the full moon that we're having on the 5th. And that full moon will be at 13 degrees of Scorpio. So into the 14th degree of Scorpio. So, and it ties us back to a year and a half ago in May of 2024. And I'll give you those dates too. So hang in there. And I hope that when I give you these dates, you think about it in terms of your own personal life, but also how you can use those dates and plan. You can kind of stress, especially with Scorpio, you can strategize these ideas. What do I want to see if in my life a year and a half from now? And it might be really clear to you what this needs to be if you look back a year and a half. So let's have a look at those in a minute. So as I mentioned, we're really blessed today. I hope you're hearing this already today on Monday, but even if you're not, you're still in this energy. The energy is very much available to all of us right now this week. And you can set a target, set an ambition, work on something, decide that this is the thing that I'm going to work my way through. And this will really be a great start to a project. So it's like marking your territory and saying, this is the thing, and let's do that. And then what we have here today, as I mentioned, is the Mars Jupiter Grand Trine. And then really you can count from today through the 29th or 30th of October. I really think we could go right through till the 31st of October. Let's call it the whole week. We have this grand water trine. And so technically speaking, it's going to be this Mars on the 29th exact. Again, give or take 2 days, so we're fully in it till Halloween, which is also originally Samhain, which is the cross-quarter days. So these are the holidays, the Celtic holidays that are also incredibly important in terms of seasonal markers. We're marking a journey down into the darkness of the winter, and the cross-quarter days are the days between the equinoxes and the solstice periods. And so here we're going deep, deep, deep into the dark. And it's very appropriate with all this Scorpio energy. And that's indeed what the symbolism represents from, of course, a northern hemisphere point of view. I know it's going to be the opposite for those of you in Australia, New Zealand, or South Africa for that matter. And welcome to all of you. And some of you, of course, in South America too. Right, let's see if we can stay with the chronological order. It's hard because there's so many overlapping transits, so don't worry too much about the details. And this, by the way, is around the 25th degree of the water signs, but we can again give it a couple of degrees on either side. I would go up to 3 degrees on either side because we're dealing with slower moving planets, and both Saturn and Jupiter are very, very slow. I've already spoken about this in previous videos. So you're hearing some things on repeat, but it's also because it's really significant. And I'll keep talking about it because this grand water trine will keep being repeated again when Venus comes into Scorpio, and then each time the moon will surface in the dialogue as well, or any other object that might go in there if you follow the smaller objects. Um, right, so we've got Mars then on the 29th, plus or minus 3 days, plus or minus 3 degrees from 24 degrees, so 25 degrees, depending how you want to count it. Then we've got Mercury, which is trining Neptune. It's already applying to that trine. Yesterday and the day before, it was applying to a trine with Saturn. So when planets trine Saturn, although it's a retrograde Saturn, it doesn't mean that things can't happen. It just means that things are not going to necessarily manifest. They're not going to necessarily materialize directly. But it's again really great for planning, and especially long-term planning when we're talking about Saturn. Mercury Saturn trines are not that infrequent. A Mars trine to Saturn is much less frequent, and especially so when we apply the Jupiter to that as well. And so we get this trine from Mercury to first Saturn and then Neptune. And that again is going to be the 29th to the 30th. You can add and subtract a couple of days there. Let's call it this whole week. And then Mercury is going to move into Sagittarius. I did a movie. I did a recording about that a few days ago, and that is the Mercury retrograde cycle that I was talking about then. But this is part of that cycle, and Mercury will then oppose Uranus at the very, very beginning of. Uranus is at the very beginning of Mercury ruled Gemini, while Mercury goes into the first degree of Sagittarius. So that will be great inspiration. Also, these will apply before and after. So keep in mind, this is already really happening. Great insights, great sort of aha moments, great for creative inspiration, especially because we're pulling in a trine to Neptune, which adds to creativity. The one thing to be careful of is that Neptune, it's in Pisces at the very last degree, very last few minutes of the last degree of the zodiac. It's an unstable degree. All of the very last degrees of every sign are very unstable. We call them critical degrees. And when the planet, especially like Neptune, is unstable, and especially as it's retrograding, so therefore something that we're still digesting or having to review from previous transits, and again, I'll send you back to previous videos that I've done. We can't always count on what we're being inspired by. It might come through a deep inspiration, and I'm going to talk about that when we talk about the full moon in Taurus, because I think this is part of the ingredients of getting ourselves to this more embodied feeling of the full moon in Taurus. But to test it, test what you're hearing, the guidance that you're hearing. A lot of times I hear online people talk about channeling and getting information. And basically, if you really sit back with it, you think, well, we used to call that thinking. And it's just thoughts arising. And there are absolutely people who channel. I know many people personally who do channel, and it's a very distinct thing. It's not just information that comes to you as a thought or something that comes through a creative idea. So again, this can apply to anyone. You don't have to be unique or special to receive these interesting dynamics, interesting ideas, inspiring perhaps ideas as well. Quite can be quite inventive as well. The one thing that we want, if we're inventing something, is something more concrete. And here we do have a bit of a dearth of the earth element. We do, as I'm speaking, have a moon, not a terribly happy moon in Capricorn in Earth. So it's a practical moon, and it's ruled by this Saturn, which is receiving the trines from Mars and had just been trined by Mercury. So we can do something with these things, but we have to work hard to ground things. We have to make it real, question and make things real. And then we get this the Mercury, no, sorry, the Mercury opposition, yes, that's also containing a sextile then to Pluto. So if we move forward a couple of days, we'll see it in action. Mercury moves in to Sagittarius, and it opposes immediately Uranus, and then that is going to pick up on this grand trine that Uranus has, the mini grand trine that Uranus has going with Pluto and then Neptune, which is just moving away from that. So really, really interesting week. I think it's going to be a week of incredible revelations. And the fact that also on this particular day, here we're stopping at the 29th, because on the 29th, this unusual object, what they call 3iAtlas, because it's the third known interstellar, the eye is interstellar object that was detected at the Atlas Observatory. So that's where the name comes from. And what the three represents, and this I'd like to just highlight in light of the Mercury trining Neptune that I'm highlighting here, is that it's the third one we know about. It's the third one that has been detected over the last decade or so. And I think that the previous one was in 2017, which is really interesting because that also is the beginning of the journey of Uranus going through Taurus. But aside from that, it's what we have known. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened. And also, there's a lot of things that are unclear about this. And I think that's a really specific way of talking about this Neptune at a very unstable degree at the end of the zodiac, where there's just been just phenomenal suppositions around this thing to the point of absurdity, to the point of even some people losing credibility around their assessment of these things. We don't know what this object is. It's behaving in an unusual way. But here's the question. Is it because we, up until this point, are too ignorant to see and understand these objects? Or is it that the object itself is so special, so unique, and so different that we need to pay attention? Perhaps it's a bit of both. And this is why I haven't really spoken about it. This is the week that we're going to see it approach the sun. It's called the perihelion. Peri, if you think of something that is around, it's peri, like the periphery of something, or perinatal period, around the time that people are born. And then helion represents the sun. Helios is the sun. And so it's just getting to its closest approach to our sun. And we know that there's been a lot of solar activity. There's some great channels doing great work on tracking these things. Again, just try and filter through the hype because there is so much hype. And there's a lot of hype for these commercially driven reasons. For example, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have this crazy imperative when we're on YouTube, which is to keep feeding the algorithm. And so then the clickbait titles and the clickbait sort of thumbnails are a little bit off the charts. And so every little detail gets inflamed and exaggerated in a way that just ends up clouding judgment. So it's just a caution. And again, I want to tie that in with the Taurus moon, and I'll come back to that, where we really will find more information around an embodied understanding of what we're experiencing and to try and understand what's going on through our senses, through our physical senses. This is Taurus. Rather than always jumping to thinking, or especially jumping to conclusions based on what other people are telling us or based on the hype that we're experiencing around us. Now, the challenge here with a Mercury in Sagittarius, especially opposite Uranus, and especially in a trine to Neptune, is that, or it's moving out of the trine by this time, by the time that it's in Sag, but Mercury, when it's in Sagittarius, is considered to be in detriment. And therefore, it can jump to conclusions. It can gloss over details, go right to an assumption around something and think that it's already wrestled the problem to the ground. And it actually isn't necessarily what is right or true. It's just that the opinion is really like, there's just this confidence. And there's a confidence about Sagittarius in the way that they describe things with a sense that this is true. And this is, again, really worth remembering that all of this week, including the 3iAtlas perihelion, is part of this Mercury trining Neptune and opposing Uranus. And now, especially because 3iAtlas gets so close to the sun and the sun has been so active, and when Mercury opposes Uranus anyway, there's often a lot of volatility in the air. And here again, I want to just ask you, I'll reflect on this more deeply later, but to try and extract yourself from the volatility so that there's not this projection of causation. Like it's not because Mercury is opposing Uranus that you feel agitated and irritable or that you feel hyper and you can't sleep, for example. It always worries me when people say, oh, I can't sleep and it's because of this, that, or the other thing. I think it's worth paying attention to that. The lunar cycles, perhaps, and again, that depends. What are you doing? What are you putting your energy into? What are you putting your mind into? The moon represents our mind. And if the mind is agitated and overactive, it's going to be difficult to sleep at a full moon, for example. But is that the fault of the moon? It's how we're relating to these events. And so again, that holds us in this pattern of being victimized by something. Something has control over us. And this is ideally where we're trying to wake up to our own agency and our own ability to live life. So do check yourself and be careful. I often avoid talking about things like this in my videos because I'm keenly aware of the power of suggestibility. And here, especially with the Mercury trining Neptune, it's really easy for people to hear things and then assume things, or ex post facto they assume, and that's what I'm feeling and that's why. So what it's doing is it's putting us out of touch with ourselves. It's putting us out of touch with our body, with our routines. We're losing responsibility for how we're taking care of ourselves or how we're operating day after day. So again, when we approach the subject of the Taurus moon, keep all of this in mind as we go forward through this whole week. Think of this week as a preparation for the Taurus moon, because indeed, on the 29th, on that Wednesday, when we get to that perihelion, we've got a first quarter moon approaching. So this first quarter moon is, it's an energy of consultation around the energy that we had on the 21st of October, which was that new moon at 28 plus degrees of Libra. And that, again, I've done a separate video about that, but it did create quite a new vibration that we're still in, of course, because we're still in that lunar cycle. So here we're receiving some information about that, but in an amplified way, in a way that's actually quite powerful. And Right. We also have, as we go forward in time, the Venus is squaring Jupiter. So let me think if have I missed anything in the meantime. There's so many factors here. I'm also keenly aware that at the first quarter moon, the moon has just met up with Pluto, so that's always an intensification of emotions. So even more reason, by the way, to keep your awareness about you, keep awareness literally about you. How am I feeling? How am I experiencing this? Am I hyping this idea of this comet or whatever this body is, this extra stellar, intrastellar body, whatever this thing is, and just hold the space for uncertainty. Hold the space for curiosity rather than go into excitement or panic. Because once we get into those emotional states, and remember the moon represents the mind, we get into excitement and panic and we lose our prefrontal cortex. We lose this capacity to assess things. This is why when we look at the moon, it's exalted in Taurus because Taurus is slow, it slows things down. It's earth. And it's just kind of like, let's just sit with this. Let's just feel this thing and think about that. So consider this as through the whole week as something that you can work with in a direct way through your body. Thinking, remember, the body is the antenna, but you're interpreting through the mind. And the body mind has to come together through the heart. So you keep checking in. Is this true? What am I doing? Am I exciting myself or creating fear? Am I creating some illusion? Am I creating, have I invented something that's not actually true? And is this good for me or bad for me, basically? Right. So I think we've covered the basic. No, the 2nd of November. Did I cover that Venus? Now, Venus, then on, let's go forward. The second, I was going in that direction, wasn't I? So here we have then the 1st and 2nd of November, we have this Venus moving into then the square with Jupiter. She then opposes Chiron and Eris. And that's also at the same time that Mercury has, well, over the course of the 30th till the 2nd, Mercury has sextiled that Pluto. It's perfected that, and it has finished and therefore perfected the opposition with Uranus. And then it puts Mars in that position of moving forward to the opposition and a very, very strong trine now that's including Saturn, the Moon, and Neptune from Mars, from a very strong Mars that's coming to that critical degree. So just keep this in mind as this is part of the continuum of the week and the moment that I'm talking to you. This is a long journey through a lot of change, a lot of shifting. Now, Venus squaring Jupiter is in general a square between the two benefics is not, it's probably the least problematic square. It might bring about a little exaggeration. That would be the one thing I would be careful of, but these are really dignified planets. So this is a Venus in her sign. It's a Jupiter that's exalted. It's a Mars that's in its own sign. So we have a lot of support in the sense that they're behaving according to type. They're behaving in the way that we're accustomed to them. So they're giving us their more sort of predictable results. Venus in a square to Jupiter can have us realize, especially with the opposition to Chiron retrograding now in Aries, it can have us realize something about how we're relating to people or how, in the Jupiterian sense, how we're relating to wisdom. Jupiter represents wisdom to our own capacity to understand, to process things, and also to process things emotionally. So here we get a little help from a Venus that is a little detached. She's in air. So she's a little bit more cerebral, less cloying, let's say. Jupiter goes deep emotionally. Mars in its own sign in Scorpio goes deep emotionally. And then, of course, we have the same, the North Node, Saturn, Moon, and Neptune. There can be a strong emotional component to this. But with this opposition from Venus to Chiron, I think it's a healing opportunity. It's an opportunity for us to realize our sense of value, our own self-worth, our value, and our sense of values, what we value and what is a genuine value. And this, I think, is part of the grand water trine especially because it's including Saturn and including Jupiter and giving us a lot of dignity as each planet is going through. So there's a lot to work with here this week. There's a lot to question, some new insights around these things. This can be pure and simple a relationship dynamic, or it can be with reference to a relationship through the self, right? So, um, and then we go forward in time. Let me just see where we are with the moon. I'm going to take up a separate chart for that, for the Taurus full moon. This is the lunar chart. So this is the build up to this full moon. It's the 5th of November, 1:19 in the afternoon, universal time. That's London. And then you can add or subtract to that according to where you are. But basically, for everyone, it's going to be on the 5th of November. And it also contains a lot of the ingredients we've just been looking at. So it's still holding these patterns that we've just been looking at. The difference here is that we've got the Mars now in very strong, inspired, dynamic, active Mars, very close still to the Mercury they're tracking each other for these weeks. Now it's come into this sextile with Pluto. So there can be, again, some real forceful decision making that's based on inspiration or based on something surprising, because here again, we have this kind of wild card Uranus that is also a little edgy because it's backing up into the last degree of Taurus, and that will be 2 days hence. So I will do a separate video on that because there's a lot to cover with Uranus and Taurus. But just keep in mind that this will be the last lunation with Uranus in Taurus ever in our lifetimes, unless you're like 7 years old and you'll live to be 90 and you'll see this again. But this is the last lunation, and so a really interesting sort of complement to this notion of the endings of things, the finality of things. This is a big part of the theme of 2025. Remember, it's a 9 year. 2025 is very much about ending things. And next year, 2026 is about beginning things. We'll talk about that as we go forward in the next few weeks. But next year we have a lot of dynamic newness, and that's why it's really helpful for us to get clear what is functioning and what's not functioning for us right now, personally, and of course, culturally, socially. Because the more we can be clear about that, the more we can be really focused as we go forward. There's going to be a lot of fire and air next year, and in the Chinese horoscope, it's the year of the fire horse, and I'm a fire horse, and it's a bit problematic. I understand why the Chinese find this year a little problematic. If you were born between sort of February, and I've forgotten the actual date, but February 1966 and February 1967, or maybe it's late January, depending. If you're going to be, let's say, turning 60 from February next year, you are also a fire horse. And if you're a woman, like in the Chinese tradition going back, they used to just burn the female babies and just kill them, because they were going to be witches. They were going to be problematic. So you can see this is the quality of the energy of newness that we have. We're stirring things up. I personally don't have a problem with that because I'm a fire horse. But anyway, there you are. I have Eris on my midheaven, so that's another thing. And this, by the way, Eris is very much a part of this story, right? So this Eris Chiron conjunction, remember, goes from 2025 into spring of 2024, sorry, 2026 at the 24th degree. They'll meet again. But they're really hanging tight. And so you please watch the video that I did about that. And they pick up these 24, 25 degrees that all of these other trinal planets are making in an awkward way, either by square. This is still the square that's holding, oh, that's the one I forgot. Yeah, so I talked about the Venus squaring Jupiter, but I forgot to talk about the Jupiter squaring Chiron. It still holds even at this full moon. So again, that's something I've covered before, and it's got a lot to do with this doubt around our own capacity, our own self-awareness or our nurturance, doubt around our capacity to take action. And that probably will be resolved only when Chiron stations direct, which will be the beginning of 2026. It's kind of like a real beginning where I think it's on New Year's Day. or maybe it's the 2nd of January that Chiron actually stations direct. So very interesting dynamic of symbolism here around things that are new, things that we have to keep testing, trial and error. So the other thing that's happening at this full moon is that the sun, speaking of, by the way, black moon, troublemaking women, and we got black moon Lilith with the sun at this time. Now, black moon Lilith is almost 20 degrees, but nonetheless, very close tracking the sun, and that is also applying to a trine to the North Node. Then later on, a few days afterwards, after this full moon, we will have then the sun reconfiguring that grand water trine. So just again and again and again throughout October, November, and into December, we just keep getting this grand water trine. So keep thinking of this as like, those old furnaces where you would just keep dumping coal or dumping wood or whatever and keep fueling the fire. Even though it's water, we're adding to this capacity to keep the flow going. Maybe it's more a spigot. We keep turning the spigot open so that the flow is stronger as we go forward in the weeks ahead. A better image. So the trine from the sun to the North Node is really interesting because now we have this again inspired possibility and an opportunity for something. And again, the nodes that we look at most usually, the more common ones. Every planet has the nodes, but the nodes of fate that we're looking at are concerned with the moon. It's the lunar nodes, and those are the ones that give us the eclipses, and that's why we refer to them. We don't really see the activity of the nodes of other planets unless you really sit down with a microscope, telescope, even don't sit down with a microscope. And so we then find again that the moon is applying to the south node as it's moving forward. It's applying to a sextile with the north node, but a trine to the south node. So again, it has that quality of something we're building and something we're letting go, something we're shedding. We're really still working with this dynamic. And if you've been following me for a while, you'll already know that, and you'll already have a sense of what these things are doing. And if not, then take a minute and go through my playlist and look back at some of these videos that describe things for you and your sign, because it's an extraordinary moment in time. There's just no way around that. So there is also this yod that keeps showing up. So we get kites and yods showing up a lot in these weeks because of this unusual configuration of the mini grand trine. In this particular case, we get a yod as Venus is applying to a yod where there's an inconjunct here between Venus and Neptune. And again, it's a precautionary tale. It's just or a cautionary tale, I guess it is, where you say, let me just think on this. I mean, there's something I need to do, but I'm not really clear. Is this the right thing to do? Is this the thing I should be working on? And Venus very quickly, within 2 days, will be also applying to an inconjunct. It is by degree for sure, but she'll be perfecting that inconjunct with Uranus as well. So again and again, there's this message of something that we need to adjust to, something new. It's different, especially with Uranus. It's an energy of something different. By the 7th, on this I will speak more about, Uranus is then going to be under the domination or domicile of Venus, and Venus will have moved into Taurus. And again, this is going to be part of this configuration of quincunx or inconjunct of challenge that needs to be adjusted. So it might be, in some cases, adjusting backwards, reflecting on how that feels to help us go forward again with the keywords of Taurus being around feeling and sensitivity, sensation, and the senses. So, especially being embodied, this is Taurian energy. It's about where Aries is sovereign in the sense of, I want to do this, or this is who I am. Taurus has a certain sense of sovereignty in terms of, this is my body, this is how I feel, this is how I navigate my experience in life. Um, so, where have we become kind of alienated from all of that, or where have we distanced ourselves from that intuition that comes from being embodied? If we're only up here, if we're only in that, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, which is especially with this thing like the 3iAtlas and so on, everybody's just kind of not here, not here and now, focusing on the what if and just distracting, dispersing, and dissolving so much of their here and now capacity, their capacity to show up for this moment. So I think this is a great opportunity to really sit and reflect. And all full moons are always an opportunity for that. But it's a really good time to really sit and just reflect on how am I actually feeling? What is my body telling me? Is what I'm thinking in alignment with what my heart is telling me? And that can be, again, about more generalized topics, or it can be about things that you need to think about personally, make choices about, for example. So where are we missing life as it's happening here and now? This can only be done through the body. So much of our modern life is pulling us through the mind. It's pulling us through our emotional triggers, which is quite deliberate. And I ascribe that to the ongoing sort of century of Pluto in a sextile to Neptune, which I ascribe to propaganda and the mind control and all of the different ways that we're being manipulated in a cultural, social, global sense. And it's heavy, it's continuing. So that's absolutely part of the theme for 2025 and 2026 as that sextile perfects again between Neptune and Pluto, and then we'll include the Uranus. So this is where if we really use this energy of Taurus to slow down, it's also very Taurian, slow things down, and especially at the full moon with a very dignified Venus, really take a step back and look, what are my values? How is this working for me? How is this working in the dynamic of relationships that I have? Because another thing that's going to happen, and again, I will address this once Uranus moves back into Taurus, again, Venus slips into the opposite sign, Scorpio, where she is considered to be in detriment, and then she squares Pluto. So we've got a lot of this energy of tension and reconfiguration just in every which way. So even if we look back to this 3iAtlas event, it would be really difficult to say with any certainty that the whatever this interstellar object is the cause of any kind of disruption. Because anyway, we've got this Uranus-Mercury opposition that is super disruptive anyway. That's an annual thing, but it's definitely sort of peak energy, especially as we've got a new Uranus in Gemini ruled by that Mercury. So there's going to be a lot of new things, and we really will have to rely on our sense of deep intuition, which again, if we come back to the notion of Taurus, but also the wisdom of Cancer. Cancer rules the deeper understanding through emotions, through the gut instinct, and through the maternal instinct, those deeper senses of knowing. That's all the water stuff as well as the earth stuff that we are all made of as well. But our energy in the world around us is mostly air and fire online, and everything is coming really fast and furious. It's very masculine, very pushy, very forceful in terms of information downloads and just constant being barraged with all kinds of things coming at us. And it's really difficult to know, was that my thought or was that thought sold to me, or did that come through some other way? And so these are questions that we ideally will sit with at this full moon. And then the other thing I just want to say here, with now, I think I just have to pull up my dates here. So if you look at these dates, I'll put them into the description, which is below this video. But you might want to take note of them now. On the 8th of May, 2024, so 18 months ago, we had this new moon, and that is the new moon that started the lunar family cycle that we're in, 8th of May, 2024, and that new moon was at 18 degrees and 2 arc minutes of Taurus. So that's the resonance with this 13-degree Taurus full moon. And then on the 5th of February this year, 2025, we had a first quarter moon. That's where the lunation began, May of 2024. We get to this point in February 2025, 5th of February, where it's like, okay, how's that going for me? What did I create? What did I start in that Taurus area of life? And how is this going? How is that moving forward? And so 5th of February is like an opportunity to become aware. It's a conscious awareness of what has already happened and where do we want to go from there. And then we have and what action to take, especially the quarter moons are about taking action. That's a square. It always requires a choice point and adjusting. And then we have the lunar opposition, which is now the 5th of November of 2025, 13 degrees, 22 arc minutes of Taurus. And that is where we realize the outcome. We realize the things that have resulted from this 8th of May, 2024 new moon. And then that will take us forward into the third quarter square, which is the where we realize, okay, now we're finished with this cycle. We need to now let it go. We need to do something about that. We're really keenly aware of the results of this, and what action will we take to close out this cycle and go into the next one. And that will be the 6th of August of 2026. All right, so then again, 9 months later, you get the Taurus new moon that will come around in in I guess that would be May of 2027. I didn't note the date down for that one, but still you got the point. So May 2027 is where this cycle closes out. So we're in the middle of a 3-year arc, so 18 months back, 18 months forward till May 2027. So if you forecast and move yourself, I'll put the actual date in the description because I forgot to write that down. But if you forecast your plans, especially using the grand water trines and the dynamic oppositions and the insights and the new realizations around things, forecast your plan in the area of Taurus, wherever that is in your chart, and we'll go sign by sign to have a look at that. So this is an opportunity to really feel your way forward into the future, perhaps at a time where you feel like everybody around you is losing their mind. I certainly sometimes have that feeling. And so it's really welcome to step back and just be in the body, because this body was given to us to live through. This is like we forget often that the body is taking a direct hit whenever our mind gets overheated, overexcited about things, when we get freaked out by interstellar objects or by the constant second guessing. What is it? Who's doing it? And it tears us apart inside on a physical level when we're not established in peace, when we're not established in a calm place. So that would be the Taurian message at this time. Taurus is just such a rich source for grounding, for values, for sensuality, for a sense of what is important to sustain me day to day. This is the big message of Taurus. And that, of course, on a collective level can be even in a really specific way, with reference to the food that we're eating or how we're able to be in community with each other, because all of that is nourishing the deeper understanding. And then, of course, the opposition with the sun, ruled now by a very early Mars, ruled by a very wise Jupiter, with a strong influence of support coming from Saturn. We do have this opportunity to really dig deep, to explore things that are coming from deep down, and that can include, in the scorpionic sense, what are we afraid of? So we know the body is always showing us what we're afraid of. The mind will make up a billion stories around that, but basically, if we come back to this place of just calming the body, like I'm personally practicing slowness as much as I can in these weeks, and I'm also just tuning in to my physical response to things because I just find myself completely just overwhelmed with just too much input, too much stuff. And it has been like that for a long, long time, but it prevents me then from being just okay in my physical body. So I feel myself distracted and you're not productive in terms of what I know I'm capable of. And because I spend so much of my time online, I really have to make an appointment with myself. I make an appointment with life, as Thich Nhat Hanh would call it. And I make appointments also with fabulous massage therapists. And so I do that too. So Friday morning, I have my next appointment. I do that every month, every week. I have a massage to come back into my body and to be here in the relaxed state as much as possible, where there's an opportunity to recalibrate. And it's amazing how that allows you to take a step back from the noise of all of the rest of this and just keep in mind, is this good for me? Is this helpful for me? And that would be the Taurus message to self-care, just caring for yourself. Um, as is always the case, right? This is also part of life as we live it. So let me take you forward to Aries. So for Aries, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, we are looking at your second house for Aries, and this moon is showing you something about explicitly what I've been talking about. It's about this sense of your values, what's important to you, showing up for yourself. How is your physical well-being? How's your physical health, your body? You've got the South Node in the sixth house of health, the North Node plus Saturn and Neptune in the 12th house of your mental health, but also where you might be not on your team, let's say, in terms of your health, where you might be undoing the benefits of what is potentially, your good health. So keep that in mind because this moon can really show you something. It can also show you the health of your finances. The axis of the second house, eighth house, also represents money and money that you share with others. And so there's a lunar realization. The full moon is like a culmination. It's an awareness of things. And that's coming through your second house of your finances. How are your finances? Saturn, Neptune, North Node in your 12th house of loss can also show you that there's something that you may be losing or something that you may have to be grappling with that feels like a loss. Is that a material loss? Is that a psychological or an emotional loss? Whatever that is, Jupiter is somehow supporting you through the fourth house of what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel stable and solid. And so it doesn't look like it's going to be a lasting problem, but it can be a deep problem, can be something that runs deep. So your ruler, Mars, is now in your ninth house, and that's going to give you a lot of inspiration alongside Mercury in an opposition to Uranus in your third house. So lots of inspiration for a new realization around your purpose, your sense of this, well, why am I here? What is the meaning of my life? And with the third house, Uranus, again, lots of visionary ideas are potential, and that's in a trine to Pluto, which is giving you new opportunities or new vision for your future. That already started 2 years ago. Um, and then, of course, Venus in your seventh house of relationship is also part of this bigger dynamic, as you hear in the introduction. And that's quite helpful if some of what you're dealing with here has to do with a life partner, a business partner, or the way that you show up in relationship. So make the most of this full moon. It's a really great opportunity for you. Literally, it's in the house of what supports you in the most literal sense for Aries. And that can be also how you are in the dynamic of your family. And with Jupiter in the house of your lineage, your mother, your emotional and psychological nature, and your house and home, this is a really rich time for you to look at all of that stuff and see how you're working with that and take a step back a little bit at this time as well. I think taking a step back is the solution for Aries to kind of rev yourself up and go forward. I think that will be part of what is really dynamic in the Mars in the ninth house, where you get a vision. You're more visionary as a result of this moment in time, but it's coming through a deeper understanding of what you are here for and what fuel you need to get where you need to go. All right, Aries, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, this is your full moon. Usually we get one a year. And this is, of course, all about you and your reference to your body, yourself, your mind, your own awareness of self, your sensitivities to what your life is all about. Are you caring for yourself? This is a very important part of Taurus. Often what happens with Taurus is that there's a sense of I need to care for myself, but it becomes less self-care and more stubbornness around habits. There, I said it. And so is it really care? Am I really caring for myself, or am I just doing the same thing over and over and that makes me feel secure? And this would be a great question for Taurus. And also, especially listening to the introduction, because this is very much part of this whole bigger picture for Taurus. You do have Venus in your sixth house of your house of health and everyday habits and work and so on. All the things that we need to do, the things that are important to grapple with and overcome. It's obstacles or open enemies and challenges that might come from tensions that come from the things that we have to deal with that we're not super comfortable with or not really excited about dealing with. So that's really favorable because Venus is supporting the you literally, and she's saying, we can do this. Let's do this thing. And that will come through a realization of what's important for you right now. What are your values? What's important? Certainly your values have been for the last few months changed, or at least that's something you're looking at. But even the sense of what supports you has become more unstable. And all the more reason to go deeper within because you're preparing both with the Chiron, Eris in the 12th house, but also the journey starting in February next year of Neptune, Saturn coming back into your 12th house. You're preparing for a life lived more deeply inwardly based on your values and based on what you have going on sort of behind the scenes in your unconscious mind, but also in terms of how you live your intimate life, like what's going on when nobody's looking kind of thing. Is that working for you? And this would be a really great opportunity to check in with that. And Jupiter in your third house again gives you lots of support through family, friends, relational dynamics. You have the Sun in your seventh as well. So this can also be about how you approach relationships and what relationships are good for you. So that's it, Taurus. Really, really great opportunity to come back home to yourself. Be as literal as you can in terms of what I said in the introduction. Go get a massage, book a massage, and take good care of yourself. I'll see you in the next video. So Uranus, this full moon is happening in your 12th house, and that's very much a behind the scenes part of your life. It can be something that you realize around the nature of your unconscious mind. The moon represents the mind, the unconscious mind, or your connection to your mother or ancestors, something that's pulling you deep, deep, deep into your awareness, especially because you've got the South Node in the 4th house at this time, and your ruler's over there in the 7th house opposite to you. So in exile, we can call that quite far away from you at the same time as Mars is strongly opposing Uranus. So the days leading up to this full moon, you may have had information or ideas or things happening through the dynamic of relationships that were really unsettling or surprising. And again, that can be negative or positive depending on what you're going through, depending on how you receive the dynamic. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. There is no, strictly speaking, good or bad. And so this dynamic is busy, to say the least, and a lot of your focus is on this pattern of yourself in the dynamic of your everyday life. Maybe how you're working. Maybe is it about your health? Is it about how you're taking care of yourself? Are you aware of something that you're doing that you really shouldn't be doing? Venus is in the 5th house at this time, ruling that moon in the 12th and Venus in the 5th can be incredibly, that's kind of the party girl. She loves being in the 5th. She's in her greatest dignity in the 5th house. That's her house of her joy. She has a lot of fun because it's the house of fun. It's the house of love. It's the house of children and the dynamic of creativity. So, you can work with this in a way that can be very beneficial, or it can be exaggerated. It can be, to your detriment because it's exaggerated, because it might be self-indulgent. So that again depends on your natal chart, but it's worth reflecting on that because you're going to be noticing, or at the very least feeling, becoming aware of all of these different patterns showing up, and you'll have to actually take action. That's where Mars is, in the area of relationships once you figure that out. And Mars is kind of holding hands with Mercury, your ruler, at the time that Mercury is slowing down at this time and preparing for retrograde. And of course, when your ruler is retrograde, this adds to the inner contemplation. This adds to the whole dynamic of reflection. And for you, it has a lot to do with that relational dynamic and how the everyday life is going for you. That's the previous video I did, so you can watch that for more information. You do have Jupiter in the second, so I think you're super supported in terms of your sense of self-worth or your value. But Jupiter in the second can also mean that there's a lot of money coming and going. So it's this is worth paying attention to, because you, with the Venus in the fifth, you might be taking some risks, or just being a little bit, again, self-indulgent, and you might find that there's a lot of money going out, or there's as much going out as there is coming in. So it's not necessarily only the good things, but on a level of emotional or family support, it is very good for you. All right. Good luck with that, Gemini. I'll see you in the next video. And for Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, you are personally part of this grand water trine. It's configured in a way that brings a lot of blessings, a lot of good luck. There's a lot of blessings in the lunation in your 11th house, because Taurus is in the house of what you receive through, like, gains, for example, from things that you do, or it's accolades from the public or from friends, or it's, just generally speaking, support or something that's coming to you that is a benefit to you. And especially with a really strong Jupiter in the first house, you and Venus in really solid dignity in the fourth, the Sun in your fifth house of your creative enterprise or your love or your children, there's just a lot of fullness, a lot of richness. So at the same time, you've got Saturn in a trine to Jupiter. I've done 2 videos now, at least, referring back to that. So watch those videos for more details. But all of this is also pulling you up into a vision, a really high vision for yourself. And with the moon in the 11th house, this is a realization around, what do I want in the future? What do I want to achieve? And if you listen to the beginning, you'll see that this corresponds to May 2024, when there was a new moon at this point, and then that will go forward in time to May 2027, and that will be the lunation that's going to end this cycle. So this is a big deal. Did I say 27, or is it 28? No, 27. Sorry, May 2027. And this is something that you can use as planning, because this golden opportunity here with this grand water trine, Mars and Mercury have you head down working on your stuff. Like for me, I have a moon and my ascendant in the first house in Cancer, and I have a stellium in ninth house in Pisces, and my south node and Neptune in my fifth house. And this, for me, this period of time is really about hyper focus on my book, hyper focus on my work, and trying to focus on actually literally building and creating a business, and working with a long-term vision for my teaching as well. And so that's something that you might also be looking for. What is the long-term vision for me right now that includes what I'm here for? It's not just a random vision, but it's part of, like, who am I and how I show up in the rest of my world. So keep in mind, Venus is ruling this lunation from your fourth house. So there can be something that's quite positive or supportive in terms of how you feel at the moment. There's some kind of feeling of things are good, things are easy psychologically or emotionally, or at least if you put your mind to it, you can bring that ease to that regardless of what's happening. That is part of the embodiment that I was talking about with the theme of this full moon. And on a level of relational dynamics, there can be something going on with the mother, because of the connection with your ruler, the moon, ruled by this Venus in the fourth house. So there might be something to do with a mother or a lineage question, or a house and home question that is part of how the future looks for you. I would have to see your natal chart to know more about that. But otherwise, an absolutely brilliant time for forward planning to a future that will bring you gains, that will bring you benefit, or bring you new friends, bring you new relationships, a new dynamic. This can include maybe love relationships because of the Sun in the fifth, and all of this dynamic with the North Node in the ninth house being ruled by Jupiter from your first house. It's a favorable moon that is ruling you in the house of community, friends, groups, and associations. So you might actually meet somebody there. And Mars is ruling your fifth house of love and romance from the sixth house. So it might be you you fall in love with the doctor that that you have an appointment with, or you meet somebody at work, and you it could be a friend relationship, but you might fall in love with somebody from work, a colleague at work, for example, if you work in that capacity. So much as possible. I would need to see your natal chart. Good luck with this, Cancer. Enjoy the vibe of the moment, which is extremely rich for the water signs. Leo, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This is happening in the lunation is happening in your 10th house of your social status, your career, the way that you see yourself out in the world, and the way that people see you. So it's kind of like your reputation, if you like. And it's also where your ruler, the sun, is in the 4th house. So there's something here that's taking away from your sense of self. When the sun is in the 4th house for Leo, it's difficult to find oneself. So part of this exercise, and that can relate to the father issues, and we see Chiron lots of the activity in the 9th house. So for many Leos, this is a big moment in time where there's this big inner questioning around father, around my identity linked to my father, or my identity linked to my lineage and the family name. And the moon up in the 10th house can give you an opportunity to say, well, this is now how I see myself. I want to see myself in this way. Or this is how I want to bring my values, my self-worth and my values out into the world. Certainly with Jupiter in your 12th house, there's a lot going on that feels like it's behind the scenes. That can be incredibly rich for a lot of self-inquiry. And that's certainly part of the bigger picture. I've already spoken about this in previous videos. So go back to the video, especially the Mercury retrograde video that I just did, where we do talk a lot about this 4th house, 8th house, 12th house inner exploration. And now with the moon in the 10th, you can see, okay, this is what I will get. This is how I see myself. This is my ambition for myself. This is my ambition for my relationship. Let's say, even imagine to your parents, for example, or to your reputation or your social status. So many different ways that this can be expressed, but just in a general sense, that can be that. It's about your ambition at this moment for showing up, how people see you and how you're received. Venus is ruling the 10th house from your 3rd house, so this can also be benefited. How you're showing up will benefit enormously from communication and connection with people, or something to do with your friends in the local space, or it might have something to do with a professional reputation that has to do with commerce and business and exchanges of all kinds. This is a part of the dynamic as well. And you've got Mars and Mercury in the 5th house. So there's a lot of creative drive, and it's trinal to you, really, really supporting you. So your creativity is really strong at this time as well. Lots of inspiration from first the Mercury, then the Mars opposition to Uranus, and Uranus is still just into your 11th house of your future. So how you're showing up, 10th house, is related to what you've been sensing is this new future for yourself. So I think this can be a great time to really dig deep and say, am I the person I want to bring forward in my future? Is this working for me? And is that the feedback I'm getting from people around me as well? And then definitely listen to the introduction, because what you're doing here, it affects your career or potentially your marriage as well, because it's about social status and married, not married, etc. Or having children is another social status. Am I a parent or not a parent, for example? All right, Leo, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. And Virgo, so this lunation is happening in your 9th house, which is actually really lovely. The moon, although it's not super happy in the 9th house, it's where the sun is normally happiest, but the moon is giving you a perspective on your sense of purpose and what you feel is important or what you believe in at a time where Jupiter is in your 11th house and it's being ruled by that full moon. And so Jupiter is showing you what is possible. This is part of the bigger dynamic of all of this year. I've been mentioning this in all of my different videos. What is possible for me? How do I see myself out in the world? This will be highlighted again when when Uranus goes back into your 10th house, and that will be 26th of April next year. But this is still part of you hold all of these things in your mind from these days leading up to the full moon, and then also going forward into the months ahead. Um, Also, the sun is in your third house, so there's something here about communication or about exchanges of some kind or about your friends or siblings. This also is not necessarily problematic in and of itself. The sun is moving into a trine with the North Node in your seventh house of relationships. So the relational dynamic seems to be something that you're deepening, you're working with it, you're getting more serious about it. Maybe you've already cleared out the dross, or you're in the middle of doing that, and you're getting serious about how you might have overgiven or not really seen necessarily the problematic side of particular relationships or the way of relating. Certainly, this is part of the dynamic you're working with as you are investigating through this year, 2025, and the first half of 26, how you show up and what part of you needs to be let go, what part of you is not really helpful to you. But Jupiter here, which is ruling that seventh house, is in the house of elder siblings. So especially if that's the question, or maybe uncles, it's helpful. And it's also the house of friends and people who are supportive in general. So this moon is highlighting something also potentially in relationship to a father figure or actual father, or a dynamic around a teacher or somebody that's a guide, like a spiritual guide, one way or another. And then that Jupiter in the 11th is again showing you the vision that you have based on something that you are intuiting or that you know is good for you. It's a good way forward for you. Um, and it is going to be retrograding. I will do a separate video about that because it's a week from this full moon that Jupiter is going to be retrograding. So that's a whole different cycle that we move into. So I will cover those slower moving outer planets, Uranus and Jupiter, which are highlighted in this month. And then Saturn is also stationing direct at the end of the month. All right, so lots to think about for you. Think in terms of a higher vision for you, a higher vision for yourself and for your life based on meaning and purpose. All right, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. Libra, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This is going to be your ruler, Venus, in your sign, ruling this lunation in the eighth house. So it can be a brilliant opportunity for you to realize patterns of intimacy with people in a favorable way. I think it may be on the surface difficult because you might be shown things that are not entirely comfortable, or you might actually have to have a difficult conversation around it, for example, because you've got Mars, Mercury in your third house, and it's in opposition to Uranus. So it's like, sweetheart, are we going the right direction? Or, are we a thing, or whatever the thing is? And so this can be a testy kind of energy as well, but it's going to be really beneficial for you one way or another. Jupiter is at the top of your chart in exaltation. And that is bringing about by the way, that's part of the earlier square Jupiter to Venus that happened on the 2nd of November. And so here we have this dynamic of this lunation that is building something for you that's coming through your good graces, let's say, and the way that you're showing up. And it's showing up perhaps in the gains that you get from relationship, or it's showing you what you get out of relationship, and that will clarify how you want to be in relationship and with whom. And that's certainly part of the theme of the Chiron Eris that's been for a long time in your seventh house. Um, and the moon in the eighth can also show you something about inherited patterns that are psychological. That can be challenges around what is hidden or occult, or it can be taboos. It can be things that are really hard to speak about, or things that feel a little bit awkward to speak about. But again, with this energy, it looks like communication is coming. It's going to happen. It needs to happen. You've got Mars, Mercury in your third house, Mercury being very slow at this point, preparing to retrograde. So there's a lot that you can work with here if you speak from the heart, if you speak from a place of depth. Certainly also you've got Pluto in the fifth, which is saying the same thing. Show up in a way that is, profoundly you. So again, if somebody is in your life and it's not the right partner, this is a season where you'll really be keenly aware of that. If this is a financial dynamic, something that you are dealing with in terms of finances, then that will also show you. So again, if you think back in terms of 18 months before and 18 months to come, if you're looking at loans or finances or some agreements or if it's about your partner's income or what your partner brings to the table, this might have a connection to these timeframes. All right, so good. And also your exaltation ruler Saturn is part of this trine that goes to your 10th house. I've spoken about that in the previous video. So really, really good for career planning as well. All right. Good luck for Libra. I will see you in the next video. And Scorpio, this is happening in your where is this happening? In your 7th house of relationship. I think I'm just gonna push it back a day because I'm about to lose. Hang on. Right, we're just gonna call this the Taurus full moon, okay? It's the Taurus full moon. So we've got the moon here now in the 7th house. And here what we want to understand is a realization around the partner and how you show up in relationships. Is it the person? Is it the quality? Is it about trust? This is the dynamic of the axis between Scorpio and Taurus. It's about the passion. It's about, if you love me, you'd better beware. It's about the tension that can be there around issues of trust and issues of control. And the moon is showing you something about this. Now that's even more poignant because your modern ruler Pluto is in the 4th house of the deeper emotions. And we have Uranus in your 8th house, again, that's coming through ways of relating intimately. So this can be a really specifically significant time for Scorpio, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant around where you see how you're engaging in relationships and how that dynamic is working for you. You do have this lovely grand water trine that you are participating in, and you have been already for weeks, but the sun, especially if you're the sun, but even just your ascendant is going to play a role even more so if this is the last decanate, let's say the last 10 degrees, the last decanate of your sign of Scorpio. And most especially so if you have 24, 25, 26 degrees of Scorpio, you're personally triggering that trine. So this is also all the more so very, very special for you. So if this is your birthday coming up, this is a huge theme because this will be in your solar return. This will be a really fabulous solar return for establishing something big, long-term, visionary, exciting, but partly because of that dynamic of what you're becoming aware of that's profound. The moon is ruled by Venus in the 12th, and that profound awareness can come through the insights that you might glean from unconscious awareness of things or patterns that you become aware of, or the dynamics of how you operate behind the scenes. And is that working for you? Is there any notion of, for example, here with the North Node, Saturn, Neptune, patterns of self-indulgence that are actually needing to be examined? Is that really good for you, what you're doing? Is it relational stuff? Is it addiction stuff? What is it? Certainly, there will be some insight that comes around values and money. Your ruler Mars has just left your 1st house and moved into your 2nd house. And then as soon as it does that on the full moon, it's in opposition to Uranus. And so there's something very new, very different, very dynamic in the days leading up to this full moon that requires some action or that will bring insight that allows you to take action. And it's actions that might be based on things that are unusual or surprising. And again, the closer to the degrees of these placements, the more that will be relevant to you. So if you have something in the very last degrees of Scorpio or anything in the early degree of Sagittarius right next door, which is often the case because Mercury and Venus track the sun so closely. So especially if you are a Scorpio sun, you might have Mercury, Venus in one of these placements, and that becomes very personal to you. So lots to do with how you're operating, how you want to operate, how people are operating in relational dynamics. How do you deal with the other, the significant other, whether that's a business or an intimate partner? All right, good luck with that, Scorpio. See you in the next video. Sorry, I'm moving day by day. Wakey, wakey. Here we go. There we go. So we've got Sagittarius on the 1st house, and the full moon is happening in your 6th house. So something here can be a realization around work or health, especially because the sixth house, 12th house dynamic is very powerfully associated with the things that you do or the things that you feel obliged to do. And this is also connected to our health. So physical health, sixth house, especially as the moon represents the body. And then 12th house can also represent our more, let's say, psychological or unconscious levels of health and how that's impacting us. It looks like with Jupiter in the eighth house, your ruler, Jupiter in the eighth house, and Mercury, Mars in your first house, there's something you're really ready to take action on. And again, you, like all the other fire signs, have a lot of activity in the fourth, eighth, and 12th houses, the moksha houses, which are really linked to our psychological foundations, our psychological self, and how we operate behind the scenes. It's like the OS. You're the gadget, and the OS is the fourth, eighth, and 12, and that's really highly activated at this time. So there's a lot that you can work with, especially as your ruler is also ruling your fourth house of what makes you feel stable and grounded, what brings you a sense of security, what makes you feel either emotionally or psychologically secure. And this is part of this bigger dynamic currently that is favored by support. It's favored by action that is supportive. And so if you do have health issues, if you do have, whether they be physical and they might connect to a psychosomatic issue, or are they psychological or emotional? Or is it that you're realizing now this, my job is killing me, like I can't do this work anymore, or I can't keep up with this pace anymore, this pace of life, or whatever it is, this is really a great time for you to take action on that. You've got Mercury, Mars in the first house, and so if you listen back to the previous video I did on the Mercury retrograde, you'll hear more about this cycle because it's personal to you. That will give you a lot of depth of answers as well around this time. And Uranus, of course, is in the seventh, and it's being opposed by the planets that have just come in, Mercury, Mars coming into your first house, whether it's Sun, Moon, or Ascendant. And this is part of a bigger vision of change, some dynamic that you realize, oops, I didn't know that before, or they just did this, or I just found that out. And that starts to change everything. And that can also be the seventh house can be professional relationships as well, like business partners, for example. It's a business house, and you've got Pluto in the third, which is also a business house. So if that's part of this bigger dynamic, then whatever the realizations are there in your sixth house of everyday work and everyday habits and everyday routines and things will be incredibly important. So maybe sit with yourself for a little bit. You're one of those signs, the fire signs, that tends to jump into things, sort of act first and think later. So the moon is asking you to sit with it and listen to the introduction to find out more about that. Because certainly you're on a new trajectory in terms of your career at this time with the South Node going through the 10th, or perhaps also relationship, important relationship. Okay, Jupiter. Jupiter. Okay, Sagittarius, good luck with that. I was looking at Jupiter, your ruler in the eighth. There's one last thing I want to say about that. If there's something going on in the marriage, there's a lot of things that can be worked through. So if part of your realization is a feeling of being burdened within the marriage, or like you feel like you're doing way more than your share, or you feel like something's off balance, this is the opportunity, especially as Jupiter will retrograde through that house of marriage and intimacy and so on. Or if this is about your family and family dynamics in terms of like your family of origin, for example, or the family you've created, same thing. Talk about those things that just seem to be there for you. And again, if this is Jupiter in the eighth, which is with reference to the occult, your ruler in the eighth house, a great time if you're fed up with your job, time to trying to leave and start to work on developing your work yourself through the occult, however that speaks to you. All right, good luck with that. I'll see you in the next video. So Capricorn, the moon is in your fifth house. That's trinal to you, very favorable. It's another earth sign in Taurus, and extremely favorable because Venus is ruling this lunation from your 10th. So this looks quite sweet for marital dynamics, or at least dynamics with people who are important to you, and also business partners. The moon is in the fifth house of business, entrepreneurship. You've got Jupiter in your partnership house in strong dignity. You can't get a better Jupiter than this. angular and also exalted. And then you've got a Venus also angular at the top of your chart in the sign she rules. So much of this, and this is a moon in exaltation because it's exalted in Taurus, where it's the most sensual. So if this is about a career move, if this is about business partnership, if this is about something that you want to embrace in a new way, a new direction for your work, or a new plan for changing jobs, changing whatever your employment status is, this is really great. It's a really fabulous time to be working on that. Lots of new insights. Again, coming perhaps from the back end or from dreams or from unconscious awareness or coming through secret dealings. Your exaltation ruler Mars is in the 12th. You might have somebody whispering some insider information or something like that that you can deal with, that you can grapple with, that you can work on. Um, and activate, some changes based on that, or you can anticipate conflict and deal with it before it gets out of hand, for example, something like that. Mars, Mercury in your 12th house at this time, especially if this is with reference to business, can also show up as an opportunity to work in foreign lands, work abroad, do things that are online, do things that are with people who are far away. All the more so because Jupiter is exalted in your 7th house of clients or business partners, and it's ruling that dynamic. You'll know by the end of the Mercury retrograde if that's the case. I watched my previous video about that. So the Jupiter in the 7th is really helpful in terms of the guidance that you get here, but your intuition with the moon in the 5th house. The 5th house is where you get excited about stuff. It's like you get a feeling of, oh, I like this. This is really what I want. This is where you want to sit down and be quiet for a little bit and intuit. Is this working? Is this not working? And this lunation will help you, and in the days leading up to the lunation as well. All right, so good luck, Capricorn. This is a good one for Capricorn, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And then we have Aquarius, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And here we have the lunation in your 4th house. It's really coming home for you. It's a home in the most literal sense of where do I live, but also in the figurative sense of how do I feel in my own body. So definitely listen to the introduction to this, where I talk about the embodied nature of our humanness. And especially because you're an air sign, there might be a part of you that often is so high-minded or intellectual or focusing on the future, that it's hard to be in your physical body. It's hard to be here and now. So this would be a great opportunity to sit with that and to question, where am I being distracted, or where am I not living my life? Where do I need to take on a little bit more of my inner intuition or my inner emotional guidance and less intellectualized informational guidance, let's say. And the moon in the 4th can also represent something about your mom or your nature of the connection with your family or your lineage in general, and an awareness around that. Certainly, you've got the North Node, Saturn, your ruler, and Neptune in your 2nd house of family. So that will also be some new things coming in there, or new information that you're realizing. And this will be perhaps connected to May of 2024, and it may connect you forward to May of 2027. 2027, yes, 2027, 18 months from now. So whatever's going on right now, focus on that. This can be quite literally about where do you live as well. Where do I want to live? Venus is in your 9th house, kind of having you looking forward into a sense of what's my purpose and where do I want to be. And 9th house is also about long distance travel, and Venus loves to travel and meet new people and hang out with people who think like her, feel like her. And that's a very strong Venus up there, trinal to you. And this might be that you're meeting somebody again through a conference or through travel with a purpose, some kind of like pilgrimage or something that you're doing that feels significant based on your values. Perhaps this is part of the significance here of the North Node, Saturn, Neptune in your 2nd. And you certainly have Mercury, Mars in your 11th house, really focused on the future, which is, of course, your nature. But I think it's again going to be better informed if you really sit with it first. How do I feel about this? What does what's my gut reaction? What was my first instinctive reaction to this news, to this idea, to this new thing? And you've got Uranus in the fifth house, so there's a change in perhaps the relational dynamic around love or around your children or around your creativity, or around something entrepreneurial. Maybe you're feeling like you're ready to take a risk. Fifth house is risk taking. This would be a little bit dodgy with Uranus really on the precipice of moving back into your fourth house. So if it's about property, um, one way or another, a sale of property, I would just hold off for a little bit, unless you can't. But because there's a lot of instability with the Neptune, Saturn in your money house as well, Mars, Mercury up in your 11th house may have you revved up for gains. Mars brings gains from your career. That's Mars ruling the 10th house, bringing that out into the 11th house. So there can be something that might be more about business, a business related transaction. And especially because Jupiter is in your sixth. So work seems to be uppermost on your mind. Sit still for a while and see what's coming through you rather than to you at this time. Okay. Good luck with that, Aquarius. I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Of course, this is really big because you're a part of this grand water trine. So everything is swimming for Pisces, for all the water signs. So this lunation is happening in your third house of the mind. And one of the things that can come through this is new information, a new awareness, or a new idea. And this is the house that is considered to be the joy of the moon. And the sun itself, which is, of course, the opposition, which creates a full moon, is in the joy of the sun. So there's something incredibly helpful going on right at this time. This lunation will bring you some fantastic opportunities if it's around business, if it's around something you're establishing as a teaching or a learning. You want to learn something, you want to join a course. Jupiter is in the fifth house of students as well, the fifth house of knowledge and information that comes through deeper wisdom. And that's, of course, your ruler. Now, Jupiter is also in the house of kids and romance and fun and what is creative. How do you create? How do you put that out into the world? And certainly this seems to have been a huge theme, what you're setting up over the week leading up to, even 10 days, 2 weeks probably leading up to this full moon, is really, really big, and it has durability. If you, the moon itself is in very strong dignity here with this moon in Taurus. It's very favorable, and it brings about something that can actually be quite lasting, can be really, really significant for you. Mars Mercury is at the top of your chart, also ruled by your ruler Jupiter, and they are now squaring you. So there's action that is required. You'll see more about that when I talk about the Mercury retrograde in the previous video that I did. You'll find that on my channel. And you've got your exaltation ruler, Venus, in the eighth house, and that's coming through things that are intimate or things that are coming through you from clients or from partners, business partners, or intimate partners. There's a lot of change that you're bringing to this moment. You're changing. You're showing up very differently. You're highlighted. Your energy, the Piscean energy, is highlighted at this time, and that requires you moving away from certain relational dynamics. And that is where perhaps third house, which represents also choosing, making a choice, becoming clear of your day to day. How is my everyday sort of stuff and the things that I'm doing as I move from here to there, or, talk about, in terms of communication and so on, how's that going? If the project that you're working on is about communication, then I would say you want to really work that at this moment, or at least set yourself up for the vision based on a year and a half ago and going forward in time a year and a half. You'll hear that in the introduction. And for example, I have a Pisces stellium, including my sun and loads of other things. And it's the ninth house. So I have Cancer rising, where we have Jupiter. And the moon, of course, is my ruler. And Venus is the exaltation ruler for Pisces, as I mentioned. And just personally, third house, where the moon is, for some of you, this might apply. That's why I mention it. I'm really working right now on my 2026 annuals to get that done so that I can, sell that and have people buy that for the weeks ahead. And that has to do with teaching. It has to do with explaining something. It has to do with guiding. It's a little bit like what I'm doing now. And it's based on the Venus in the eighth house in the occult. It's based on that so-called hidden knowledge, or astrology, of course, being there in the eighth house, or tarot and all of those kinds of things there in the eighth house. But the eighth house also has to do with money that we share or money that we receive from people, and including from clients. And so it's really auspicious with Venus there at this time. Strategize, plan, and move in that direction. So you take advantage of this while you also have a very strong Mars Mercury at the top of your chart. A lot of ambition, perhaps lots of insights coming also, because the air signs are your hidden houses, your moksha houses. So that is about mental acuity, mental awareness. That's a trait that Pisces has natally. It's about this intuition, because you've got these air signs in the moksha houses. And so that's, which is also, by the way, something that I'm creating in terms of the course to teach about these things. So that's for me, a foundation of understanding the signs. Right. I think I've covered it all, Pisces. You are really in this fabulous opportunity for personal growth and happiness and good fortune. And this lunation is just giving you an opportunity to see, how does my mind fit with that? Or how do I communicate around that? Or how do I allow myself to work with that? So bringing about just a fabulous opportunity for Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye, everybody.